Hello and welcome. This is another piano Pandemictivites video. And we're going to talk about improvisation one more time, and then I promise we'll move on to other things. But today, what I wish I had known is that improvisation is not a gift. I wish I had known that. I thought that people who could improvise were doing this out of some special dispensation from talent or God or nature or however you want to phrase that, and that you either had this or you did not. Now, I should have figured this out sooner than I did, but I'm pretty slow on the uptake. When I was a kid, I was really interested in playing rock and roll guitar. So I bought a guitar and I did figure out chords on my own. And then I got together with my friends and we had this really, really horrible band. And I'm so glad ubiquitous digital video was not around at that time because, the blackmail would be spectacular. So we would gather in somebody's basement and make a horrible racket. And I played rhythm guitar, okay? At that time, the way a rock and roll band was organized is you had lead guitar, rhythm guitar, bass, and drums. And one of those guys would sing, or you had a separate singer. And so we had a lead guitar player, and he knew how to go way up the guitar neck and play those lines. And no one explained that to me, like, how do you know what to play? Why doesn't it just sound like random garbage? And no one explained it to me, so I just thought, I don't have that talent. I don't have that ability. And I was reasonably comfortable just kind of playing my rhythm guitar because I knew my chords and I had my place, with my little social group. So I didn't really question it. And that went on for a while until another friend and I, later in high school, we started messing around with blues. Got interested in blues. And we started discussing the blues scale. And somebody showed me, here's these little patterns. And if you use these frets and you go up and down, you have all the notes of the blues scale, and it sounds like this over the 1 chord, and you can move it over the 4 chord. And to me, this was a complete revelation that these systems were in place. And so, okay, I started learning how to do that. And then on the piano, I learned what a blues scale was and how you fit it with a chord progression, and could play some really kind of elementary level blues. But it still didn't click with improvisation in any kind of classical form. And again, it should have, because like with the electric guitar, on the piano, sight reading, again, I thought it was a gift. Some people could just do it, and I was not very good at it. I was a good memorizer. And it never occurred to me that I was a good memorizer because I was sitting around memorizing all the time. And these people who were good readers were sitting around reading all the time. They were accompanying the choir, they were accompanying the musical, they were accompanying the church. And so, of course, they get good at it. That never clicked, and it really should have. Similarly, this whole idea of something is a gift that some people have and do not, and you get behind that and you realize that, no, it comes out of certain experiences that people have or do not have. This explains why classical musicians today are no good at improvising. So I have made another chart. Oh, I'm so proud. I can barely stand it. So here it is. Here is my chart. And what we have is on the left side, we have some terribly oversimplified descriptions of what musicianship was like in the 18th century. And on the right, some terribly oversimplified descriptions of how we do things in the 20th and 21st century. So first of all, in the 18th century, basic musicianship was an integrated program of harmony, counterpoint, composition, and keyboard skills. And this is known in the German-speaking countries as Generalbass or figured bass or continuo, and it's known in Italy as Parlamento. Now, those two things are closely related. I teach from a Parlamento perspective, but I have friends who like to teach from the Generalbass perspective. Either one of these gives you all this stuff just while you're learning basic musicianship. Just from when you start out, you're getting all of these things in your hands, your ear, your eye, and your mind from the start. In the 20th century, basic musicianship is things like scales and arpeggios and Hanon, with what I call half-hearted theory thrown in. You either have an extra theory workbook, or eventually when you're 18, somebody tells you a fairy tale about Roman numerals. And so that stuff is, because it's so late and it's so half-hearted, most young musicians consider it unimportant. And so I would argue, and again, I know I get in trouble for this kind of stuff, I would argue that college-level music theory classes don't work, in the sense that they don't make the people who take them into better musicians, by and large. Okay? I'm going to argue that they actually don't work. So that's a comparison of these two systems. Now, the second line, I found this very interesting when I realized this. All accompanying in the 18th century was done from figured or unfigured bass. They never wrote out accompanying. So if you were going to play a Corelli trio sonata, you're going to play the keyboard part, or you're going to accompany a flute sonata, or somebody's going to sing an aria or a recitative or whatever, almost never would you have all of your stuff written out for you. You would have a bass that was either figured or unfigured, and you have to make up the rest. So just on a daily basis, doing the normal grunt work of an accompanist, you have to do the work of assembling musical materials. In other words, you're actually improvising. Okay? Whereas today, all accompanying follows a score, and all solo performing is from a memorized score, so you don't have to interact with the way music is made. You only have to obey a printed score. Next box. Most musicians were composers, performers, improvisers, and teachers. That is, the typical professional job was either in the church or the theater or the court, where you're going to be doing all of these things. And so naturally, you have to develop the skills that go with all of these things. So you have to write music, you have to improvise, you have to play. Whereas now we have a thing of department of performance, and a department of history, and a department of theory, and maybe a department of conducting and music therapy and ethno this and that. And so musicians have been taught to be specialists where they don't have to be competent outside their own areas. And I think this fragmentation of the academy is not an overall benefit to those who are in the academy. I think we pay and lose more than we gain from fragmenting. So if I can compare the two systems, I would say the 18th century way of training musicianship is like baking from scratch. You have to interact with flour and eggs and brown sugar and salt. You have to feel them, you have to smell them, you have to know what they are, how much to use. This flour looks good quality, this sugar is bad quality. You have to know all this stuff to do that job, and you learn it naturally along the way of just doing the work of baking. Whereas making music in the 20th and 21st centuries has something to do with nuking a Hot Pocket, where yes, you have to do the work of getting it ready, but you don't actually have to understand how this thing was made. You don't even have to read the list of ingredients. So that is a pretty good explanation why classical musicians can't improvise, and why improvisation is not a natural gift. It rises from activities that we do, but we've banished those activities from the typical training of classical musicians in the 20th and 21st centuries. So this is a thing I wish I had known. It's not a gift. It's something you can go get. It's something you can learn. It's learned step by step through practical instruction. And if you are willing to do those kind of things, you can learn to bake from scratch in music. So I wish I had known that. I'll see you next time. Bye.